I work for this company called Replit. Replit, it's a mobile and web cloud-based IDE. It's basically allow you to make software, and it's a pretty big deal, Replit, right? I mean, it partnered with Google, raised 200 million for like a 1.2 billion valuation. It's a pretty important company in the startup ecosystem. And yet, this is a picture of a room, the war room, the Asian war room with the AI team that launched a pretty important feature a few months ago. And that basically skyrocketed our valuation and our revenue. And it's just a few people, but that's not the interesting thing. The interesting thing is that guy with the white hat and that guy with the yellow shirt, they're the same guys as this picture. This is from a few months later, here, 10 p.m., Saturday night, working on a demo to present it to Elon Musk. And again, same people, right? Jackie and Veba. And here they are again, Jackie and Veba on a carpool. Because we go, like these 5 people, we travel carpool to the office every day. And it's interesting. It's an interesting coincidence that like people that ended up having this kind of outsized impact on the company, just a handful, are actually neighbors. And they share the carpool every day. And you may say, look, this is a coincidence. These two things have nothing to do with each other. And I would honestly disagree. By the way, interesting thing, nobody in these pictures is American. Nobody. It's quite crazy, honestly. And this is yet like one more reason why this country is a country of immigrants. But I digress. I don't think it's a coincidence. We have multiple instances in history when a group of people with physical proximity ended up doing very interesting things and amazing things in different in different places, right? We have the Churches Aids, which are like these people, these 8 people, or all working for Shockley that ended up basically kicking off the Silicon Valley, right? We have the PayPal mafia, I'm sure you know about them. Google Brain is a very interesting one that I don't think is discussed well enough. Or like in general, like every single thing happening in AI today can be traced back to kind of the same people, all at Google Brain, and that ended up founding OpenAI and then Anthropic and then XAI, et cetera, et cetera. NYC, obviously. You can put in there also Harvard, like the Ivy Leagues. So like physical proximity, feeding basically each other and having this positive feedback loop. And you can take this to the extreme and start saying, look, also your partner, your friends, your neighbors, your school, your city, your country will affect you, actually much more than you will affect them, right? I mean, the case of a partner is one-to-one relationship, but like in the case of a country, most likely you individually will not really have that kind of impact that as comparable to the impact that the country you decide to live in will have on you. And that's kind of like my belief. The arrow of causality is not really like similar people end up living next to each other and working together and doing things together. To me, it's much more interesting the alternative version, right? Where people, you join a group of talented, ambitious, risk-taking people and you become like them. And so that's the reason why, like out of this belief, that's the reason why I thought it was the best decision for me to come to the US. Because I see certain things that I want to make mine in this country. And I'm gonna get to what these things are, but before, a quick 5 minutes, 2 minutes bird's eye view of how this has happened, like how did I end up here. This is a too long retreat of like 31 years of life, but really, I started coding when I was 12, and my professors didn't really like it. During high school, I was hacking instead of studying. That really didn't go well, but I managed to get out of high school, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna set myself straight. I'm gonna now do my work, get like good grades, study, and be rigorous. So I enrolled in econ. I studied economics instead of like computer science or whatever, because I was like, no, I need to do my duty. Ended up hacking and coding instead of studying, so it didn't work well. And the lucky part is that hacking, that working on the side instead of studying brought me not exactly good grades and good GPA, pretty mediocre if you ask me, but it ended up becoming a company. I founded a startup, raised venture money, moved to Berlin, hired a team, the whole ordeal of founding a startup in Europe. This was a few years ago. At this point, I think 8 years ago, so quite a while. And things got pretty well to a certain extent, but then we hit a growth ceiling while going international, and we couldn't really expand monetization as we wanted to. So we were like, look, this is time to pull the plug. And so we sold the company. From the outside, this is what I would consider, let's say, moderately successful story. But the outcome was still that I ended up being bored and restless for like a year. I was like, now what? And this was again back in Europe. This was in Germany. And at that point, like I decided to make this contrarian decision. People are usually, like when you found a company, especially this young, and then you manage to sell it, you are going to be kind of pre-pressured into founding another one. And everyone around you expect you to do that, right? When like you have VCs texting you, hey, like when you found something else, like let me know. And implied in there's like this notion of if you don't, you're gonna be like a failure. And yet I still decided that was not what I wanted to do, because I didn't want to stay in Europe. I wanted to come here. I wanted to come here for mainly these three things. I wanted to find people that were doing instead of talking. I wanted to find people that were taking risks, and I wanted to find people that were taking bold swings with ambition. And that's not something I was finding in Europe, from like the people around me, from the environment around me. And I was like, no, this is the environment I want to surround me with. Ambition and determination, basically. And there's only one place where this is happening all at the same time with this kind of intensity, and it's here in Silicon Valley, in San Francisco. And that's when Replit reached out. I would like to tell you that I made this big analysis, and I ended up saying, look, I want to join this Amazon team, and I made a huge analysis that ended up saying, look, Replit is the best option. I applied, and I got in. Not at all. I was just lucky. What I ended up doing was, during that year, I was very bored. I was hacking with things, tinkering, and I was playing with technology, because that's what I like to do. And during this tinkering, I ended up playing with the notion of streaming IDEs to the browser. An IDE is like this place where you basically write software, you write code. And typically this is happening in the local machine. This is a program you install and you write things. But I really like the idea of putting that into a server and streaming to the local computer, because it unblocked so many things. I blogged about it. That blog went viral, and Replit reached out to me. And they were like, look, I think you should work with us. This is one of the co-founders that randomly sent me a DM on Twitter. And I didn't even see like for a month, so it was like quite wild. But at the time, I was like, this is exactly what I need to be doing, and I said yes immediately. And I think like this reflects still like the spirit of this country, right, and this place in particular. I was doing instead of talking, right? I was putting myself out there, doing things, hacking about things, and actually producing things. I was taking risks, because I like saying yes to that kind of proposal was, with the benefit of hindsight, pretty wild and pretty crazy. Didn't have really a job role. They were like, look, come here and we'll figure it out. Like still to this day, 2.5 years later, I still don't know exactly what I'm doing at Replit. And we're gonna get there in a moment. But truly, like I don't think, I'm flirting every day with risk. But at the same time, doing that with ambition, and I think, I mean, if I'm still here, there must be a reason. And so I think that ultimately that's a story that I think reflects what I want to convey, the fact that this environment is shaping me exactly in the way I was expecting it to. And now you may ask, okay, but why? Why do you want to have all these things? Why like risk-taking? Taking bold bets, why this constant doing instead of talking, which I'm not finding in Europe. And there are two reasons. The first is just values, like that's what I like. That's the person I think I am. And two, it's more analytical. I wrote this long essay, which is the title of the event you were invited to this morning, The Dawn of the New Startup Era, which is the reason why Eric and I got in touch in the first place. It's 5,000 words. It's going to take like 30 minutes to read it. It took 9 months to write. The TLDR, I condensed the TLDR in this slide. After having spent a long time here talking to so many people, mostly VCs, but also founders, and in general operators, I got to the conclusion that we are transitioning towards a new era in building companies and startups in particular. Those of you that study economics will recognize a very simple formula, how to calculate the expected value of anything, right? And the expected value of being successful for a startup is the likelihood of that success, like basically, how likely it is that you end up succeeding, multiplied by the payoff, like what will you get out of it, minus the risk and how much it costs for you to gamble, basically. And my belief, and basically the TLDR of this essay, is that if you increase the risk part quite a lot, and you ramp up the technical risk in particular, the overall formula will go down. But at the same time, the payoff will go so much higher, much more higher than the increasing risk. And so overall, you end up having the expected value of success is actually on average going to go up. And so all of this to say that I expect in the next 10 to 15 years to see the actual generational companies to be much more similar to companies on the left. So in this case, I have Varda Industries and Physical Intelligence, to first physical companies, hardware companies, to especially in the case of the latter, companies that are using deep science to make what they're trying to make, rather than the companies that were successful in the last 15 to 20 years, right? So marketplaces, network effects, SaaS businesses, which are more like light, and where success is based on the assumption that you can afford to take less technical risk, because Airbnb is not particularly impressive from a technical standpoint. It's much more impressive from a growth standpoint. And that was true for the last 15 years, but for all the reasons that I outlined in that essay, I believe this is not going to be the success story of the next 15 years in this place, and in general, like all over the world. So in order to be successful, if you buy my thesis, which is up to debate and open to be proved wrong, but if you buy that thesis, you will see how having those characteristics, living in an environment that fit those three things, will increase the likelihood of building something great and being successful, whatever the definition of success it is for you. Which I think can be really summarized by one of the core values of Facebook: be bold. I like a slight twist to it. Amjad, the founder of Replit, has this idea of taking bold swings. It's basically the same thing. One is more like an identity statement. The other is more like an active statement, like making bold decisions, taking these bold swings. I really like that, and I think there's one place where this is happening, which is here. And if everyone around you is doing that, you are much more likely to do that too. And that's the reason why I think it's worthwhile to move here and to go through all that trouble that is moving to the US in general and to Silicon Valley in particular.